Chairman of Senate Labor Committee and Vice Chairman of Senate Tourism. Good morning, sir. John, how are you?
Good morning, Paul. I'm doing well.
It's good to have you. I tried to text you some things over the weekend. It keeps coming back on me. Did you block me or what?
Not that I know of.
So I was going to say, and I sent you some great stuff, and it always comes back that it's just not getting through.
You texted me?
Yeah, well, on your phone line. So
Yeah.
double check and see if you get. Now you may want to block me after today's show. So I'm not sure, but.
You're probably right.
So you may just forget about even spending some time with that one. No, you and I had some conversations about this particular subject, and many conversations over the years. But just on this particular subject, I just felt like you were not happy with what was going on with all of the people suffering in the city of Jackson. I mean, through all of the water and sewer malaise that happened, you constantly said that you felt like maybe the leadership was not doing what it was supposed to. And you had to have some, it was almost like Jerry Clower, shoot up here amongst us. One of us got to have some relief. And then you and I talked about what are the ways for this to happen. How could this possibly happen under the leadership that's in the city of Jackson now? So
how could what possibly happen?
All right, so those things did happen. Relief is coming, and I'm wondering, was there any way for this to happen without it being called racist?
Well, I don't know, Paul, but if it walks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, it's a duck. And the state of Mississippi has a somewhat unique history. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're part of this nation, and this nation has its issues with race. But this state especially has issues with race. We have a 200-year history since slavery, almost, where there has been in many instances, a deliberate attempt to neutralize or diminish or to ignore black elected leadership. And it goes back to the time of the Reconstruction period, and it kind of culminated with the disenfranchisement of African Americans in 1890. And then we were in a dark period where there was absolutely no possibility for black folks to have any sort of political self-determination. And then we make the changes during the Civil Rights Movement, and we come into another era, it seems to me, where that same attack is being made of African American leadership. It's not just about one administration. Yeah, there's a lot of problems. There are a lot of problems in Jackson.
So let me ask you this. If it were not a predominance of Republicans who were in control, let's just say it was Brad Dye as the lieutenant governor, Ronnie Muskos as the governor, and Billy McCoy as the speaker. If they would have done the same thing, it's not about party, it's about racism.
Well,
if they would have made the same if they would have made the same decisions, this is the only way that this could happen. We need to have this taken over as a municipality because the leadership there, regardless of their ethnicity, is just bankrupt. Well, would it be as equally racism
I would think
if it was Democrats?
In my period of service in the legislature, I haven't seen it this bad. I mean, it's never been this bad before. But I've always had.
You mean the leadership racism in the House and Senate?
I mean the fact that we do things along racial lines in Mississippi.
How do you define that between political lines?
Our policies, our financial and decisions in terms of how the state governs itself, in my opinion, is all about preservation of the status quo. We want to leave things as close to being the way that they are.
It's a valid question, John. How do you discern the difference between a political biasness and a racial biasness in there? In other words, not bias so much as power. In other words, when something is done, is it just the feeling of that, or going back to the past and racism and slavery, or is it something that you could say this has more to do with racism than the power enforced by a political party?
Well, I think the solution has a lot to do with racism. And what I mean by that is in all these bills that we've had, and there are 4 that are pretty onerous, but we've had almost 10 bills, not one member of the Jackson delegation was consulted. Not one that I'm aware of. The local elected leadership has not been effectively communicated with. And I think that we've got to be very sensitive to that in Mississippi.
Yeah.
We've got to be sensitive to to our history and to know that, one of my colleagues who was handling one of the bills said, well, I'm up here in DeSoto County, and I'm concerned because when people say, oh, do y'all have water down there in Mississippi? Because what happens in Jackson washes over on the rest of the state.
I agree with you 100%.
But what I said to him, and he said, we're concerned about how this looks. Well, I made the comment to him, I'm concerned about how this looks too, because the way it looks like you are circumventing black elected leadership rather than trying to figure out a way to work with them.
So you're saying basically that it was a racist decision for the governor to step in and do what he did initially to get this to get things back on track.
No, I'm not. I think the governor did his duly elected duty when he did that.
That part was not racist.
No, but some of the comments that he made thereafter were.
I'm not going to talk about the comments because I think everybody on both sides could have handled this better as far as working together. I don't disagree with that.
The mayor has played the R card, the race card as well. I don't agree with that.
You've got to have that both ways. A lot of times you come to the Democrat, forget about the black caucus, just the Democrat caucus, you go back in, you talk to the Democrats. Democrats don't want to talk to Republicans now. And I mean, we've gotten that on a national basis and on a state basis, and that's a shame because I think we could have had a better...
That's the case here in Mississippi.
Well, it is now. I mean, you guys, you're calling everybody out there who tried to find a solution to this racist without knowing the individuals or looking into their hearts. Or you're looking back to Bilbo, who, by the way, was a Democrat.
Yeah, again, this is not about party. It's about race.
Huh?
It's not about party. It's about
if you
race.
paint it that way, then I think you've painted it with a broad stroke that's not fair.
Well, look, I'm not saying that in their hearts folks are racist. I'm saying that some of their actions are racist. And when you look at
that's by your evaluation.
It's my evaluation. That's correct.
Okay. All right.
That's correct.
So where we're left with this, we got more time to talk about this on the other side. So where we're left with this, and I'm trying to bring people together, just trying to find a solution to this. But what we're left with this is that after the governor said what he said and did what he did to get water back running and to get this thing going in the right direction, which the entire nation knows that was a good move, and it was a valiant move for him to do, and then he was mocked for that as not doing enough by his opponent.
No, there was
his opponent now, Brandon Presley, says that if he were governor, that never would have happened.
Well, I can't speak for Brandon Presley, but I will say this, that before the governor took the actions that he took, a bipartisan, a number of Jackson senators called on the governor to call a special session, Republicans and Democrats.
So so after that, the governor should have said, look, whatever happens now, because this thing is falling apart, and I understand that some people are worried about us getting a little high-handed and doing some things that have to be done. You guys are on your own. Just whatever you want to do, we'll do our own water district, and if you fall apart, then that's fine. And then that would have been the proper procedure?
That's not the solution either.
All right, I want to hear your solution that would have been a better way when we come back. Because, I mean, you've been in there for a couple of days now, like, 30 years?
31.
31. Senior status. We will ask the wisdom of John Horhn, my friend from District 26, Hinds in Madison County, back after this. And Ricky Garrett joins us. She is Alderwoman at large and also Clinton and legislative chair. She's with the Mississippi Municipal Association. We'll ask her thoughts on, and I'll ask John, too, his thoughts on reducing or eliminating the grocery tax when we come back after this. Since I mentioned this and let it hang out there as far as the grocery tax, your thoughts on that, John? It is still alive, is it not?
Yeah, it's still alive. But, Back during the Tuck administration, when she was lieutenant governor, there was a move to eliminate the grocery tax. And it failed, but some of the big questions were, what are we going to replace this revenue with? How are we going to pay teachers? How are we going to run schools? How are we going to pave roads without this grocery tax? It's this very critical part of the state's economy. And so before I see I'm willing to vote for something like that, I want to know what's going to replace it.
Do you know what percentage municipalities get of that tax?
Sales tax is 18.5% of every dollar that's spent.
What percentage of that does the cities get?
18.5%.
Oh, they get 18.5%.
Yes.
I got it. So, from what I understand, there might be a way for that for the state not to get its share, and that would be the savings, but the city to be made whole by still getting their share. Is that a compromise?
I think I'm not worried about the locals getting their share. I'm worried about the state government's general fund budget.
Well, then you can't. Then that's the same worry you're going to have for cutting any kind of income tax.
Yeah, but the grocery tax has been a mainstay of taxation in the state of Mississippi.
Well, I understand that, but it's also one that's going to affect every single family. And today, with the grocery prices as they are. It's probably one of the best savings that you could do.
I'd be the first guy to get in line to cut the grocery tax, but I want to know what we're going to replace it with.
All right. Let's get back on this subject because there are some people asking on the C Spire text line, and I don't know we could probably research it here since you've been in there since what 1990, 89 or 90? 93. How many bills have you voted for since your district is, of course, District 26, Hines and Madison, that would solve the situation as far as sewer and water?
I would...
Or authored, I should say.
We have right now $800 million that EPA and other federal agencies are providing. We have a third-party manager who has been brought in on an interim basis. We don't have a problem with our drinking water solutions for our drinking water. We have the resources to do it now. We do not have resources for wastewater and sewer. And so if we're going to have a conversation, let's have a conversation about how you can help the city deal with this wastewater issue. The drinking water issue, that was the Regional Water Authority is a solution in search of a problem. Yeah. We have a solution in place for that right now.
But you skipped the question. The question was, how many bills have you worked on or in 31 years that you were addressing this problem as a state senator representing
I'm the author
of
the 1 cent sales tax. I was the original author of the Capital Complex Improvement District. Those are two landmark pieces of legislation that have been put in place to help the city.
So when we're talking about, and you mentioned this before the break here, when we're talking about solutions where you need the Republicans in the House and Senate since they're in a majority, what could they have done that would placate you and the Democrat Black Caucus that would have made them happy and that this would not be racist? It would be just consulting with you and coming out with the same strategy or a different strategy altogether?
On the Senate side, we have a fairly decent working relationship with Democrats and Republicans. And I can't speak for the House, but on the Senate, we do work together under normal circumstances. So that's why we were a little miffed that they haven't talked to us at all about this. If you want to help, then put resources into the capital city that are other than federal resources. It has been 14 years, to my recollection, besides the emergency money that we put in the fall, that the state of Mississippi has put a dime into infrastructure needs of Jackson. It was
are you saying that some of wait a minute, some of the dollars that were allocated through the federal dollars that came into the state were thereby given to the city of Jackson, were they not?
My point is, those were federal dollars. I'm saying, what kind of skin is the state putting in of its own resources? It's general fund money.
Can you say the same thing about
monies? It's bond money.
Can you say the same thing about any other municipality? Because Jackson's not the only city in the state that's suffering from this or have neglected systems underground.
But I'm talking about the state's commitment of its own resources to the support of the city.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The state's resources to Benoit or to Bogachita or to Tupelo. I mean, you have all of these people out there who need the money. Should I, as a taxpayer in my county, pay for you in your county when it's been neglected from the taxpayers there for so long?
Well, the neglect is a very complicated issue. There's the flight from the city and the loss of its tax base. There's a
but whose fault is that, though? Is that also racist? Because you've got a lot of African Americans who are in the upper income who have fled Jackson fast.
Right. There is no question that Jackson has problems. No question at all. But the solution is not deciding to take the assets, to take over the city, to put in to superimpose another government on the city.
So the solution is to let them run it like they've been running.
No, the solution is work with this administration as best you can, but this administration will not be in place forever. And yet some of these solutions are forever solutions because it's a stripping of assets belonging to the city.
John, you just kind of committed when you say that this administration is not going to be in there forever, you're basically telling me they're terrible. We don't approve it, but just deal with it and then that means the people have to suffer. You're telling your own people to suffer until this administration leaves.
The mayor himself has said that the city is not in any position to run its water sewer administration. He has welcomed the third-party manager in. Yeah. The third-party manager has the resources to do his job on everything.
How is that different from? How is it really different from, other than not going over this and having it approved by the Black Caucus? How's that different from what the governors what the House and Senate have in the works to put together?
I'm sorry. Repeat the question.
How is a third-party administration? Because you're not going to have the House and Senate running this. The water system. You're not going to have the governor running the water system. It's basically a third-party entity that's been set up, is it not? And a board?
The third-party entity who is there as a conservator of the water and the billing and collections already has the authority to set up a permanent third-party manager. So why would the state then come in and say, well, no, we want to do it. We're going to do that. You can't do it. Even though he's been authorized by a federal judge to have that authority.
When you go back and you look at everything being racist, I know
I'm not saying everything is racist.
Well, it sounds like that to a point where it gets. Listen, I will agree with you that we probably, some of the words on both sides of this could have been handled a little bit better.
No doubt.
But you've got to have people on both sides come together.
Exactly.
And it's just not happening.
And that's why we are taking the position that we're taking. Everybody's got to be in this mix to try to find a solution. It can't be a paternalistic decision that says, oh, well, you children don't know what you're doing, so Daddy's going to take your ball away, and that's the way it feels, and that's the way it's been.
That's the way it's been perceived, and I can see how it would be. And hey, look, if that happened to me, I wouldn't like it, to be honest with you. So knowing, and here's where I agree with you. In knowing that, you got to be sensitive to go in and say, here's what we want to do. Are you okay with this? If there is no other way, I'm going to have to make some people mad, but I've got to do it for where the ultimate objective of this is the people that are living this out every single day, the businesses that are trying to hold on. Whatever the solution is, that's what we've got to do. Whether you call me racist or whether you call me domineering, and then I would hope you would understand this. But first of all, come to you and see if you can get your approval.
Well, the 1 cent sales tax was a bitter pill to swallow. I was the author of that. And it called for a separate commission to oversee that money. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I knew we had to get it done.
Give you final thoughts when we come back in the final segment in a moment. John Horhn, District 26, final segment here, and that was Benny Thompson. Apparently, he wasn't consulted either, but that consultation came from the city itself. So.
Right, and there again.
So was the mayor racist? Yeah, was the mayor racist toward Benny Thompson? I'm not sure, but I was looking at your committee, and I think every bill in your committee is dead, is it not? As far as labor committee,
had 16 bills, and 17 bills.
Yeah,
and every last one of them were double referred to a committee that I knew. I might have passed it out of my committee, but it was DOA in the second committee.
Yeah,
Why go through the effort?
So are you seeing that there was something racist about that?
I'll reserve my comments on that part.
I'm going to give you the final segment here. So because I'm trying to restore my faith that you're going to unblock me in case you have blocked me. So I want to give you the final segment. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, well, so I think we need to. I think cooler heads need to prevail, and we need to dial this thing back and look at it from another standpoint. If you're dissatisfied with the work of an entity, the state has other resources and other means of dealing with it. But the solution is not to create a separate district that only certain citizens are able to be included in. The solution is not putting a separate judicial system in place that is appointed. That's unconstitutional. The solution...
Well, it's not unconstitutional. If it was unconstitutional, they wouldn't be doing it. I mean, there are some precedent for this.
Well, yeah, there are, but the Constitution says that judges will be elected by the folks that they're serving.
That's narrow in that interpretation, but the way that they're doing this is totally legal.
I think you're going to find a number of judicial organizations who are going to come out against that bill.
Well, I wouldn't doubt that at all. I'm sure that's going to be the case. But I'm looking at how do you take crime under control, and you have to figure out what the problems are, and some of the problems are the court systems itself.
But for Paul, for the last 3 years, we've been dealing with special judges. There are three.
Could I ask you this? Why does that matter? If you put good people, good judges in those positions, regardless of where they come from, 2 miles across a state line or precinct line, or white, black, or fuchsia, why would that matter to you?
I think we have to bear in mind, once again, and you say I'm going back to Bilbo days.
Yeah. We
have to bear in mind the history of Mississippi and be aware of how things look and how they're perceived. And there are often knee-jerk reactions on both sides because of our history. Not in spite of it, but because of our history. And with that in mind, we have to govern toward the greater good. And I think that, people want to be safe. They want clean drinking water. They want the toilets to flush. They want to be able to feel safe wherever they go. And there are complicated solutions to that. But let's sit down and communicate.
So it sounds like to me what you're saying is that if you see a viable solution, you should not follow that viable solution without taking into consideration the racist history of people who died 100 years ago or more, or it doesn't matter to the people who came before us.
I think you've got to factor in your history in every decision that you make.
I've got to let that sink in here because if you do that, to me, in my mind, you would be a racist. Because if I look at a child who's suffering, who's trying to go to bed and a bullet comes in the bedroom, every night they're shooting outside, and I have to take that into a racist situation. What is right, what is wrong, is the only basis that I could do that on. And I couldn't do it based on what Bilbo did or what the Klan did or anything else. It's what is right and what is wrong. You're asking me to do something different.
The same tactics and the same solutions that Bilbo used or that the framers of the 1890 Constitution used to come up with the solution.
Man, here's what I work cheap here. If you need a mediator that is really cheap, just give me a call. I'll see if I can squeeze in the time.
Paul, we could use you.
I don't know about that. Anything else before we let you go? Any other bill out there that you think we have to get passed before we sine die?
Yeah, some sort of real solution on health care in the state.
Yeah.
We've got hospitals that are dying on the vine. People are not getting the kinds of services they need, and the legislature has a responsibility to help solve that.
I heard the $80 million is now asking 200-something million from hospitals. Is that right?
This is a multi-billion-dollar problem, Paul. I don't think $80 million is going to be a drop in the bucket.
Dr. Gross was on with me last week, and he said that rural hospitals across the entire country are having the same fate as Mississippi. So doesn't that put that in perspective, that it may not be just Mississippi and it may not be something that we're doing? Well, it's the culture, it's the movement away from the small cities to bigger cities?
When the rest of the country catches a cold, Mississippi catches the flu.
I'll leave it right there from Dr. John Horhn. Thank you, John. Appreciate it, sir.
Thanks, Paul.
We got news.